Content is intended to provide accurate information, however, is not intended as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult a financial, legal, or tax professional for specific information regarding your individual situation. Opinions expressed and provided are for general informational purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security.
Welcome to Game Plan for Retirement with Chris Mcintire. Mcintire Retirement Services, Northwest Ohio's retirement planning resource.
And welcome into the program. This is your Game Plan for Retirement with Northwestern Ohio's resource for a common sense approach to planning for our financial investment retirement futures. He is Chris Mcintire, president and founder of Mcintire Retirement Services. Chris, welcome back. We appreciate you being here.
Hey, good morning. Nice to be with you, Peter. I hope everybody had a good weekend out there, or is having a good weekend anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a pleasure, Chris. And we do appreciate the guidance, the perspective that you provide for the listeners, the retirement-minded savers and investors across Northwestern Ohio that tune in each week to hear your guidance and perspective and to get some common sense, down-to-earth advice on how to uncomplicate this financial world. I don't know if we'll ever achieve that goal completely of uncomplicating it, but we'll make things a little easier to understand. And Chris, today we're going to talk about really all things retirement income, from the questions you should ask before getting going to how to fill the retirement income gap to when we end up getting forced distributions and the IRS mandates that we start taking money out of our accounts. All of these are going to play into our retirement picture. And we've got to know the ins, the outs. We've got to map this out ahead of time in order to have optimal results. And ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to get your game plan for retirement put together, that's one of the values of being tuned into this program, is that Chris Mcintire does offer you that opportunity. And to take advantage, all you need to do is get in touch with them at Mcintire Retirement Services, 800-868-1194, the number to call. That's 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. 1194. So Chris, to start with, we've got this article. It is from The Street, and it's talk about retirement planning daily, planning to live in retirement. These are the 4 questions you should ask your advisor about retirement income planning. And thought we'd kick it off at the very beginning. Retirement income planning specifically, Chris, is a big topic and a big subject of discussion there in your office at Mcintire Retirement Services.
It certainly is, Peter. You know, if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. You know, when you work with folks that are kind of transitioning into that retirement phase and the paychecks stop coming in, you know, what are the options to continue those paychecks coming in? And, you know, we've referred to Tom Hegna's books, Paychecks versus Paychecks, and, you know, a number of different strategies that we employ here at, you know, in our practice to, you know, try to set ourselves apart from kind of the rest of the traditional brokerage world where it's stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, you know, and that's it. We're not a one-trick pony. We can certainly use stocks and bonds and mutual funds, exchange-traded funds, some real estate holdings to provide sources of income from dividends, from interest, capital appreciation, to, you know, using an annuity to have a guaranteed contractual stream of income coming in. That obviously, you know, is very important to folks. And some of these have the ability to increase the income over the course of time. And I think, you know, a lot of us are now more cognizant of inflationary threats than ever before here, at least in the last 10 to 15 years, if you will, Peter.
I heard the term recently, Chris, reflationary. We are reinflating the economy, but for us buying groceries, paying for our utilities, really what we're seeing is that the prices never went down. Maybe the economy is reinflating, but the prices are inflating, and we are paying more than we were a year ago, certainly 5, 10, 15 years ago. And that's probably going to continue, actually.
It certainly appears to be that way, and that would be something that we would want to caution our clients on, and that we have been cautioning them on. We've been diversifying, using some real estate holdings, transitioning away from some of the, you know, the bond holdings, if you will. We're concerned about interest rates going up, which pushes the prices of bonds back down until we get into some sort of normalization of interest rates. But man, we have a long way to go from 0 to 4 to 5% here, if you will.
Indeed. And Chris, so when we're looking at creating this retirement income, inflation being a factor, you have tools, you have strategies, you have ways that people can build in increasing income. One of the sources that is supposed to have increasing income, and the first question here that this Retirement Daily article from The Street asks about, or suggests you ask your advisor about planning for retirement income: when should I claim Social Security benefits? Now, Social Security has had some amount of built-in cost of living adjustment, although maybe this hasn't truly kept up with inflation.
That's correct. It's whose cost of living is it keeping up with? The average urban wage earner, certainly not the typical retiree who sees skyrocketing medical expenses that might not affect younger generation, if you will. And you, as you begin this transitionary phase into combating inflation, running the risk of running out of money, you need to be cognizant of, look, what are all the options out there and what are the best strategies for yourself? Unfortunately, Peter, sometimes we live in this 30-second soundbite world where we get all of our news off of a quick hit, a quick Facebook link or something in that social media aspect, where, not many people take the time to do the due diligence. And we know if it bleeds, it leads, but doesn't necessarily mean that's the whole, as Paul Harvey once said, and now the rest of the story, right?
Right. Yeah, if we see it on Facebook, or a coworker has done something financially and talks about their strategy, Chris, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right strategy for us. Last week we talked about that retirement roadblocks report, and the illustration was a comparison between siblings who followed the exact same financial model and got drastically different results for the income and the remaining balance of their retirement accounts. So we really need to examine each and every piece of creating that retirement income on an individual basis. But Chris, that is something that you help educate your clients on, and walk through the different scenarios and the difference between making an informed decision with Social Security versus just going out and grabbing it at 62 because that's the first moment that it's available. That may make a very significant difference in the total amount of income that we do end up claiming and collecting from Social Security, or what we have to pull from our personal assets, and what is left over, therefore.
Certainly, Peter. And then also, what is the amount that we're going to leave to a surviving spouse in many cases? So the timing of when to take Social Security is one of the most important factors that our listeners and ourselves are going to have to make as we transition into retirement. And I have a client who's retiring up in the Toledo market right now, and his full retirement age is like 66 and 5 months. And he's going to retire here at age 65, transition on to Medicare. And we made the determination that now is the best time for him to take his Social Security benefit and, lessen some of the impact that he's going to take off of portfolios. Health considerations came into play there, the overall nest egg. So there's a number of different factors. A lot of times we will, if somebody retires at 62, just to give a real life example, buddy, is, and they want to retire at 62 and with modest means, we will watch how their investments are performing. If we can delay taking Social Security, which means we're pulling more out of the 401k early, but if the 401k is doing well as anticipated, then we can wait and take Social Security because we get a 5% increase from 62 to 63 in terms of income. And remember, at 65, you got to start taking out some Medicare payments out of your Social Security benefit. So you're going to get less money if you start at 62 at 65 because of the Medicare premium adjustments. And, and some people have no idea how that works. So again, part of our educational process is, walking through this process, that it's not just about investments, it's about Medicare, it's about estate planning, it's about long-term care planning, it's about tax planning as well. That's why we call it retirement services, not investments.
Well, obviously, Social Security cannot be thought of in a vacuum. It's part of the planning process, part of your game plan for retirement there with Chris Mcintire and Mcintire Retirement Services. If you'd like to go through that process and get your Social Security report and analysis as part of that game plan for retirement, pick up the phone and give a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. But things to consider, spousal benefits, widower or widow benefits, longevity, age, the different types of retirement income that can impact your Social Security benefit. Lots to take into account. Chris, question number 2 that was suggested that we discuss about our retirement income with an advisor before we retire. How will taxes impact my retirement? This is another big area that you help people focus on and get a better understanding of.
No question about it, Peter. I think most of our listeners are going to agree that income taxes have a better chance of going up than going down or maintaining the status quo. So how do we convert some of those dollars that are in traditional IRAs, traditional 401ks, traditional 403bs into income tax-free strategies? And if we can employ some of those, what's the best strategy to start getting some money to flow out of their IRAs and 401ks and make the most efficient means we can of them paying income taxes, which are an inevitability. We can't just say, hey, in one fell swoop, we're going to convert everything to a Roth. It's going to be income tax free. You got nothing to worry about. Life doesn't work that way. It is a process. Many people listening today have, 700,000 upwards of $1 million or more in taxable retirement accounts. So that money got there over a 30-year time frame. It's not going to come out of there in one lump sum, if you will.
But we are going to have to pay some taxes on it. We do know that. It's pay me now or pay me later. There certainly could be some advantages to thinking about being proactive with that and making some potential Roth considerations or other strategies that Chris Mcintire has talked about many times here on the program to be more tax efficient throughout retirement, to get to keep more of your money. But certainly one of the questions to ask before you get into retirement or looking forward throughout retirement, how will taxes impact that retirement income? And if you'd like to sit down and review and analyze that, again, it's part of the game plan for retirement. Pick up the phone and give Mcintire Retirement Services a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. And Chris, really kind of putting the pieces of the puzzle together here. The next question, which account should I pull from and when? This is not a one size fits all, the same path for every person. This really is figuring out what is the optimal strategy for each individual situation.
Certainly, Peter. You think about the people that are listening out there today, how many different backgrounds that they have come from. Some of them have very comfortable pensions. Some of them have very large 401ks and then everything in the middle. Some of them have Roth IRAs. Some of them have a lot of money outside of retirement accounts in like a traditional brokerage account where capital gains taxes may be an issue. Those that have the large 401k, how do we pull the dollars out of those and when? If we have Roth IRAs, non-IRAs, and then traditional IRA accounts, what makes the most sense? What's the best strategy? And, I suppose just to give an example on the radio show here today, if someone had $100,000 in a Roth IRA and $500,000 in a traditional IRA, we would use the traditional IRA in most cases to develop a stream of income. Maybe they're pulling $2,000 a month out of it, for example, and use the Roth IRA for bigger lump sum items, like if they were going to buy a car for $25,000, put a roof on the house, that type of thing. Use that for the bigger lump sum withdrawals. That's a good example of, in a generic situation.
Well, again, each situation going to be a little different. You've got to map that out, figure out when to pull from those retirement savings accounts at the bank versus the retirement investment accounts in the market versus those IRAs versus Roths. When and where do each one get utilized, and how can it make the most optimal impact on the longevity of your retirement security and stability. That's what is mapped out in the game plan for retirement. A look at income, a look at investments, a look at taxes, healthcare, and legacy. All of those are included, and those are the high level topics. Each one of those, obviously, with a lot of questions below it that you need to have answered and addressed. But Chris Mcintire will help you do that and dig into those details. Pick up the phone and give a call if you would like to get that game plan for retirement put together. 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. Chris, the last one on this article to sort of introduce the topic of retirement income that we are talking about today, but one that's on a lot of people's minds right now, and one that sort of constantly stays on our minds. How will a downturn in the market affect my retirement plans? I know that you help people balance this because we don't want to completely leave the market, but we don't want to be all in and completely reliant on the market either, correct?
That is correct, Peter. You want to have maybe plan A is to draw off of your investments. Plan B might include some safe money strategies that you have just in case plan A doesn't work. And here would be an example. Let's say and I'll use an easy round number. You got $1 million and you're pulling 4% of that out, which is $40,000. Most people here have heard of the 4% rule, which we've brought into question here recently, that's probably a pretty heavy withdrawal rate in most circumstances. But if the market has a 20% correction and now you have 800,000, you still want that $40,000 of income. Now you're pulling 5% out. That doesn't sound like much going from 4 to 5%, but that's a 20% increase in the withdrawal rate that you're taking from your investment portfolio after it's had a 20% correction. So kind of a double whammy, what we like to call the sequence of returns risk, or sequence risk, if you will.
And in order to address that potential risk, or that real risk potentially affecting us in retirement, Chris, you've talked about sort of a different segmented approach to how to structure the assets. When we have a paycheck and we're investing for growth, it's all about that asset allocation. But you have talked about once the paycheck stops and we need to replace it with assets, that's about income allocation. And it is a fundamentally different model.
It certainly is, Peter. And I was just looking on my little cabinet over here. I've got a stack of books there written by my buddy David Gaylor. I put a foreword in there called Income Allocation, and it describes, a situation where you have an investment portfolio from someone who spent 30 years, 40 years working, and you take a piece of that investment portfolio, set it off to the side, and create a guaranteed income stream out of that. Okay. And you can use a safe money strategy for that as well. We do a ton of income allocation models using this particular strategy. And then you leave the rest of the money in the investment portfolio and to allow it to continue to grow and replace what you might be pulling out of your income strategy. And, you've got something like that in place before something bad happens in the market. It gives you the ability to determine when do you want to start using this strategy, because it's a lot better to put that strategy in place when the market's at record highs than when the market is already given back 20%. Because typically, if the market falls 30%, that would have been the money you'd have had allocated in your safe strategy if you'd have done it when the market was at high points anyway.
Sure. And a big part of that, Chris, being proactive, understanding when to identify those opportunities, the market being where it's at now. We are not worried about today how a immediate downturn. We're worried about what looms around the corner. When could that next downturn come into play, and how would that impact our ability to allocate assets for income and to create that income allocation? And so, ladies and gentlemen, now is really the time to be proactive on a tax planning standpoint, on an income allocation planning standpoint. All of these are times that we can act and be proactive and make sure that we are improving that financial outlook. Pick up the phone, give Chris Mcintire a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. And Chris, you've got that book, Income Allocation. You wrote the foreword to it. You've got a few copies available there in the office.
Yeah, we sure do. I'm holding it up here for those of you that are watching on a podcast here or looking off the website, written by my good buddy David Gaylor. And Dave asked me to put a forward into that book for him as well. And Dave's been a guru around here, becoming one of the popular talking heads on the income allocation side of the investment world, if you will, along the likes of a Tom Hegna and just some wonderful people, a Wade Pfau, if you will, on how much more peace of mind it can bring you to know in retirement that you've got the basic living expenses covered contractually, that would continue if your spouse passed away. I mean, isn't that the peace of mind that pensions used to give people? Well, if I die, my wife's going to get all of it or half of it or 2/3, whatever option you took. In a lot of our income allocation models, there is no discount for that.
Well, if you would like a copy of that book, pick up the phone and give a call. Now, the strategies described in this book may be best suited for those with $500,000 to $1 million or more. So if that's you and you are concerned about how to plan strategically to address retirement's greatest risks, pick up the phone right now and give a call and set up a time for that game plan for retirement, that strategy session with Chris Mcintire to get your plan crafted and to request and receive a copy of the book Income Allocation. 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. Now, Chris, a big part of that income allocation process is figuring out how much our personal assets will actually be responsible to generate for us. Filling the income gap is sort of the mathematical process. And quite frankly, the missing component of a lot of financial and retirement projections that leave people with a little bit of a seed of doubt in the back of their mind of whether they're doing the right thing and taking the right steps.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Peter. Knowing what the expenses are going to be on a monthly basis for yourselves, and then comparing that to what is the actual money that has to come in. So, for example, you've got $3,000 a month coming in from Social Security and a small pension, but you need $6,000 to make your lifestyle work out for yourselves. So you're $3,000 a month short, or that's what your income gap is. And then based off of the investment portfolio or savings that you have accumulated, what is the best ultimate strategy to help satisfy that $3,000 a month income gap?
And Chris, there was a commercial many years ago with big green numbers floating over people's heads, and it seemed like everybody's was 1.5 million, 2.5 million. And the premise of the commercial was, what is your retirement number? It showed these hypothetical numbers that people were dragging along, but it never talked about how to calculate and figure out what that retirement number is. How much will it take for me to retire comfortably? This process of income allocation and defining the income gap basically is the mathematical algebra equation that solves for our retirement number, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And some of these things aren't don't need to be overly complicated. Many people get intimidated by when they see that very large number. Your number is how much income can that number generate for you without having to sit there at night and lose sleep. You want to have some peace of mind and understanding all of the options that I have out here, from an investment portfolio to creating a solid income stream with some contractual guarantees, having the ability to combat inflation with potential increasing income throughout your retirement. Don't count on that Social Security benefit to double during your retirement. Remember, many times that Social Security cost of living adjustment is offset by Medicare premium adjustment. So, when we run our retirement calculations, sometimes we'll only use 1% on Social Security cost of living increases from somebody's 30-year retirement perspective. You're going to need more than 1% a year more increasing in income. And what are the alternatives? And how do you best employ those strategies? For most of you that are listening out there today, you can have several different IRA accounts. So if you've got one big 401k, it's very common that gets split off in many different types of retirement accounts for yourselves. That's not a taxable event. You're doing a direct rollover. Okay. And you might be starting an income plan with one company. You might be having an investment plan with another company. It's very common that you'll end up with 2, 3, or 4 different types of retirement IRA or Roth IRA strategies as you move through your retirement.
Well, again, we need to have those mapped out in order to get optimal results. You don't just wing this, ladies and gentlemen. You don't get to retirement and hope that you'll be all right, the guess that you'll be all right. We project these steady rates of return out in the future that when we reflect on it, we know aren't realistic and can't be counted and depended upon to happen every year consistently. And yet we make that transition. Let's have that plan. Let's have that plan in place in order to optimize the outlook and our confidence and our quality of life into and throughout retirement. That's what the game plan for retirement really is all about, is helping you be more informed and educated about your money, what jobs it needs to perform for you into the future, when and how to access it, when to tap into certain accounts, mapping all of that out, making the most of Social Security and other streams or sources of retirement income, being efficient as possible with taxes, paying the least amount as possible there. Pick up the phone, give a call. Chris Mcintire will walk you through the process. He will help you construct that game plan for retirement. 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. 800-868-1194. Finally, Chris, as we are rounding home here on our time for our discussion of all things retirement income, there comes a point where even those that may not need to take distributions from certain retirement accounts, the IRS mandates it. Now, this has been changed in recent years, but we still need to look at RMD's required minimum distributions very carefully and figure out how and where, or if they will impact and affect us into and throughout retirement.
Peter, the Internal Revenue Service isn't going to let you just park your money and never use any of it. For those of you that have those 401ks and IRAs out there, at the age of 72, the IRS mandates a minimum amount that you have to take out. And for rule of thumb here, just use 4%. It's not quite that much at 72, but just for ballpark purposes. So if you've got $500,000 in a 401k, you've got to pull out $20,000, whether you need to or not, and pay tax on that, which can also lead to some other taxation events. It can affect your Medicare premiums, your Social Security taxation as well. And if you've got $1 million, that's about a $40,000 withdrawal. As you get older, that distribution gets longer because your life expectancy gets shorter. And they changed that in 2020, basically, from as part of the Secure Act, because it used to be 70 and a half. Most people are shaking their heads. Oh, okay, yeah, I remember 70 and a half. It is now 72, and maybe changes will come down the road. Who knows? But that money's going to come out of there at age 72, regardless of whether you need it or not. And if you live long enough, the idea is those accounts will have a zero balance, and you would have paid the taxes as you lived your life. But if
that's
not,
the IRS's hope.
Yep. Yep. And the IRS becomes, if you're in the 22% tax bracket, the IRS has become a 22% beneficiary of your retirement account in that example. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, well, a lot of people saved very aggressively in those accounts to try to give themselves the most secure feeling, but we know that the IRS is our business partner in those tax deferred accounts, and it is truly a debt to the IRS is what we are seeing there. That's why they are requiring those minimum distributions. They are taking that dollar and they want their share of those tax revenues from it. So think of it like a minimum payment on a credit card, if you will. It is a debt to the IRS, and sooner or later, they don't forget about those dollars. They require that we take it. Now, Chris, a lot of people have strategies where they take that RMD at the very beginning of the year or the very end of the year. Perhaps we should think about optimizing this with our need for income, or also looking at market conditions for when we take those RMD distributions.
Certainly. And, November and December are the most common months for required minimum distributions. I guess people will use it for Christmas spending, but it certainly would be a prudent strategy to take them out when the market's higher versus when the market's lower. In 2020, they waived all the distributions. No one was forced to take a distribution. We still get emails on it from clients. Hey, did they start it for 2021? They certainly have. And so hopefully you've got all of those things put back into place for this year. And, some people don't need it for income whatsoever, Peter, and they do a qualified charitable distribution where they pay that money directly from their IRA directly to a charity. It satisfies the required distribution and it's not taxable. So there are, some nice little loopholes that the IRS has given people who want to be charitable. Hopefully those continue. But for those of you that need to draw it as income, do you take it monthly? Do you take it quarterly? Is it best to take it annually? It depends on what type of account it's coming out of. Is it coming from a safe account or one that has had investment risk and it might be up or down in value when those times come? There are a lot of important decisions that you need to make there, Peter. That's for sure.
Well, indeed, a lot to think through as you are considering your retirement income. And Chris Mcintire here, ladies and gentlemen, as your resource to help you map it all out, understand the ins, outs, the pros, the cons, the benefits, the disadvantages to certain strategies, and how to plan strategically to maximize that income, minimize the taxation, keep more of your money, and have that secure feeling with a plan in place that will continue to provide for income throughout the longevity of your retirement. Pick up the phone if you would like that game plan for retirement specifically designed for your individual situation, or if you'd like that book, Income Allocation, a great place to get started there as well. 800-868-1194, the number to call. That's 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. Chris, we always appreciate your time, your guidance, your perspective that you provide here on the program.
Thanks, Peter. It's good to be with everybody. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and everybody stay safe out there and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Visit McIntyreRetirementServices.com for many additional valuable resources, including other great episodes of Game Plan for Retirement with Chris Mcintire. Be sure to subscribe.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor. Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.
Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. Indexed or fixed annuities are not designed for short-term investments and may be subject to caps, restrictions, fees, and surrender charges as described in the annuity contract.